wedding planning podcast.
Will your suppliers be offended if you ask if there's wriggle room on their fee? I mean, everyone negotiates, don't they?
Does it really matter if your ceremony runs over a little bit? Because as the bride, you want to be traditionally late.
And what the heck do you do if you're not getting great vibes from a supplier you have already booked and paid for?
Well, in this episode, we're going to try and answer the questions that some of our lovely, lovely couples have submitted. So think of us as your wedding agony aunts. I'm going to start us off, Vicky, because actually, what we haven't done for ages, before we get into the questions, is just say who we are.
Oh, that might be a good idea. Go on then, babes. Off you go.
So I'm Keshira. Keshira of Keshira Creative Events. I'm a wedding and event planner, so I work with you either to do your full wedding planning or just on-the-day coordination, and I'm there to make sure everything works.
Perfect. And I'm Vicky from Spot On Ceremonies. I'm a celebrant, and I am there to make all your ceremony dreams come true.
Lovely stuff.
So your questions. Well, when you get married, you'll almost certainly find that questions, asking and answering them is something that you do an awful lot of. But you know what? Hindsight is a really wonderful thing. And sometimes really thinking about what you need to ask, drilling right down into that, can save you time and money. And also misunderstanding and disappointment.
I totally agree. I think you really need to think about it before you start, but sometimes you just don't know what to ask. So luckily, these guys have asked for you.
So we cast our net and we did ask couples who have either just got married or who are planning their weddings as we speak to come up with some questions that they genuinely wanted answers to. So our first one, and I think this is one that you really need to perhaps lead on an answer with, Keshira, is Becky asks, is it ever acceptable to haggle or negotiate on price with a supplier? Because she says, we're just wondering that while our photographer doesn't actually advertise a more minimal package, if we just have ceremony shots, would it be okay to ask for a reduced price? Now, before you answer that, I will just say that the wedding is on a Sunday in August next year.
Yeah, I feel it really depends which supplier.
Okay.
But I feel quite strongly that if a supplier's got packages on their website, it's always worth having a conversation with them. However, the reason we have packages is because we know what we can achieve in the amount of time and how much that then costs. So ways that you could haggle or negotiate, I suppose, is when you're talking about catering, and maybe you go, okay, do you know what? What you've offered, the caterer, you love them, you think they're the right fit, and they're talking about doing canapes, 3-course meal, evening food, cheese board, all of that. Maybe it's about you thinking, actually, what we want is maybe we want one more canapé, but remove the starter.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So ways to actually, it's because the cost of goods, we did a cost of living episode just recently, but the cost of goods is really high. And actually, it's not always possible for a supplier to offer you a better deal or a discounted rate. If you're looking, like you say, this one's a Sunday in August. Well, unfortunately, that is also the busiest time of the year.
Exactly.
So you're going to get suppliers quite often saying, I absolutely can't, because they can take a full price booking on that date. But I think it's also about valuing what your suppliers offer. So why do you want that supplier? What is it that they're doing that you go, do you know what, I really want that? If they are just simply out of budget, there are going to be other fantastic suppliers out there that you will love as well that might fit better within your budget. So I think you have to have a really clear idea of what you want going into the planning phase so that you know you're asking the right people for the right things at the right time. And I do think, it's thoroughly looking at the websites, I think.
Yeah.
I think, most people have some form of, even if it's a from price, they have those listed. So what do you think? What's your haggling negotiation?
No, absolutely. I mean, I don't get a lot of haggling. It's, sort of a ceremony is a ceremony is a ceremony, and it takes a certain amount of time. But I did have a couple who asked me, just said, oh, well, if you didn't have to write this bit, but it's not really... For me, it's, my time is in meeting the couple, which is, that is going to take the same amount of time whether I omit, a few of the vows or not. I've still got to be there on the day for the prescribed amount of time that it's going to take. I've got to allow that buffer for traffic or whatever. So it doesn't, quite often it just isn't viable. And to sort of, I think particularly with a photographer, I think that that's what Becky was saying is, we just want the ceremony. Yes, but they could be taking, as you say, a full price wedding on the same date.
But they might offer a ceremony package.
Well, they might.
So if they offer a smaller package, absolutely, you can take a smaller package.
Yeah.
I think it's always worth asking the question. Don't discount someone unless it is so wildly outside of your budget. Don't discount someone just based on that alone. But I think it's a tricky one. And I think, unfortunately, things take time, and good suppliers know how much their time is worth and what they need to do to fulfill your wedding.
Yeah. So I guess it is that thing of, by all means, see if there's wriggle room, but don't just come in. I heard of one supplier recently who just had a couple come very, very boldly and say, is that the best you can do? Can we look at, wriggle room on that? There was no sense of, it was just trying to knock them down rather than suggesting if we didn't have X, Y or Z, is there wriggle room there? So I think a lot of it is in the approach as well.
Yeah, totally. So hopefully, Becky, we've given you a bit of help there. So we've got one from J and L. We'll keep their names a secret for them. But they have said that they are having a destination wedding. So they've got people flying in from all over the globe. They don't want anyone to feel like they're on the subs bench, but they think it might be sensible to ask some people to cover key roles in case of emergency, like best man, matron of honour, someone to stand in for missing bridesmaids. So they're saying, how do we ask people if they will be on standby without making them feel like second choices?
Ooh, that's really tricky. And I think, from memory, they're so worried they haven't even asked anybody to do anything yet. But they know that they've got to make some decisions. I would say, with a great deal of diplomacy is probably the answer. But honestly, I think with a destination wedding, and if they are flying in from all over the globe, perhaps people would understand your anxiety around that. So maybe just explain that it was really difficult to make choices because everybody is so special to you, but you are genuinely worried about everyone getting there. So would your B team do you the very great favour of stepping in if needed? The alternative really is to double up and be really upfront with people and say, we are worried about the logistics of everybody arriving where they're meant to be. So, we're going to have 2 best men. We're going to have 2 matrons of honour. Obviously, that has a cost implication.
Yeah, I also just think you don't have to label these things. Don't label it.
Yeah.
Just ask someone, would you do a reading? Oh, if this person isn't able to be there and isn't able to do the reading, would you mind reading for us as well? I don't think you need to necessarily label, you're my best man, you're my this. Because what are the roles you're expecting them to play? What is it that you're expecting them to do? If you're generally, for a lot of destination weddings, you've got a really full wedding package included and you've got a coordinator there. You maybe have a wedding planner that's planned it for you. So actually, I think strip right back to the beginning. What is it you want these people to do? And go from there. I don't think asking people the question is necessary all the time. I think sometimes you can just go, you're our really special friends and family. We want you there.
And also maybe it is that thing of don't try and micromanage it in advance. If the worst happens and you do suddenly find that you're short of a best man or a matron of honour, that's perhaps the moment to ask the question.
Yeah.
You are here, you are our dearly lovely friend. Would you step into this?
Absolutely.
So I think perhaps that comes under the heading of you're trying really hard to mitigate against all manner of disasters or potential fallout. And actually, sometimes you just can't because who knows? So, and I think if you're inviting people who really mean a lot to you and you mean a lot to them, it should really be a given that, of course, people will step up for you if needed.
Agreed.
Do we think? Now, we've got one from F and R. F and R, I don't know who they are, but an interesting one. And I think, again, this is one for you. Our caterer is not responding very helpfully or indeed quickly to requests for consideration to particular allergies. Should we be worried? It's 4 months to the wedding and our initial inquiry promised that all allergies could be easily catered for.
Okay, I'm not too worried.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. Because unless, you're saying your caterer has already said that they can cater for all allergies. Now, most caterers aren't expecting any allergens from you, any guest lists, anything like that from you until 4 to 6 weeks before the day.
Oh, really? Okay.
So that is the point where they're going to go, please, can you send everything over? Now, if they're not responding 4 months out, is it the middle of wedding season? Actually, any time of the year, if they're a caterer, they could be busy throughout the year. It may be just that they're not round to focusing on your day yet. They've obviously done the initial work with you, got the quote out, you've chosen a menu, that stuff at the beginning, fantastic. You've obviously, if you've been happy with them right at the beginning, then that's brilliant. If it's just a little bit awkward at the moment, I also would say if they're not responding at all, like you've sent 2-3 emails and they've not responded, yes, there's a worry there. I would send a very quite direct email saying, please could you respond? Please could you confirm you're receiving my emails? Please respond. Understand if maybe we need to speak at a later date, but just asking for that. Pick up the phone.
Yeah. I think that's quite often the shortcut. You know, people, we do have a terrible tendency to communicate in the written word or, voice notes and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Actually, just do old school, pick up the phone, you know.
And I would say any caterer nowadays that doesn't look after dietary requirements probably isn't a caterer that anyone should be booking. And these guys have said that they will look after them. They've promised that allergies could be easily catered for. I would honestly, I know it feels stressful. I would just take a moment and remember that they will get back to you 6 weeks before.
Fair enough.
So we've got worried of Somerset.
Oh,
our
please
next
don't
question.
be worried in Somerset.
Worried of Somerset. This is one for you, Vicky. Is it okay to vet speeches? And if so, how do we approach this? Bit worried that mother of the groom is going to bang on too long about his childhood.
Okay. Well, interesting anyway, mother of the groom doesn't always speak, but in this instance, clearly she's planning to. I would always say use timing as it's a perfectly legitimate excuse. You will be balancing the day schedule or your on-the-day coordinator will be. And I would say maybe ask her for a copy of her speech in advance, partly so that you can time it or your coordinator can time it. And also, from a really practical point of view, I generally, if I'm staying on to host speeches, I do ask people for a copy of their speeches just in case, for whatever reason, they can't deliver it. I mean, I've had people who've turned up, they've got laryngitis, they've been so blind drunk they can't stand up and deliver it. It's not an unreasonable request.
I've also had ones where if they've got beautiful stationery, so they're using a calligrapher or something like that with vows. We had one where the calligrapher, the stationer created a vows booklet, so therefore needed to gather that. So if you want to give them a gift back, say, we'd love to pop your speech in a gift format for you. So asking
can we have
for
it in
that
advance?
Way.
Cheers, thanks a lot. Yeah, I think that's very, very valid. But I would also sort of think about maybe tackling it head on a bit in the first instance and just sort of gently say, look, we want our speeches to focus on us as a couple with no more than a passing reference to us as individuals, and certainly not something that harks back so far to childhood, because it just doesn't really feel part of the day. And you'd really hope that she'd respect that. But another option as well is ask them, and I've done this before, ask them to write a personal letter to you both that you will always treasure and have as a keepsake, but that you would really prefer was just for your eyes only.
I really love that. A personal letter that
And then you can, you might even be able to build that into your ceremony. Sometimes we do. We have a letters of love kind of moment where we put them in a little time capsule that they can then open at a later date, maybe on their first anniversary or something.
Oh, I'm really into that.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Yeah. But, honestly, other than that, I mean, I guess you could be thinking about bunging the staff to set off a fire alarm.
Yeah,
but that's
totally.
a bit drastic.
Actually, one of the big things, I have had to step in twice now in the father of the bride speeches, where they've been nervous about it. they've said to me, look, if it goes a bit off-piste, can you do something, step in? And I have had to literally physically step in and go, I'm really sorry, we've got to move on, running out of time.
Yeah.
So if you have got a coordinator there, then please just ask. I will always do my best to make sure your day is how you want it. And if it's not quite right, then I will step in. I'm not scared.
No, I'm not. But also, I think the other thing, utilise, if you're having a celebrant particularly, utilise them and ask your celebrant, is it possible for you to do a quick call with the 2 or 3 people who are making speeches? Because there's some really good, quick advice, about making speeches.
Just don't do one.
Don't do one. Or know what your out cue is.
Yeah.
Know how you're going to finish. Because quite often the ones that ramble on are simply because people don't know how to finish. So tap into your resources. The other thing you could do, and I did have one last year, the couple asked everyone to pre-record their speeches to be played out rather than done live because they had people who were particularly nervous about making their speeches. So that might be an interesting way to...
I'd say just keep an eye on logistics with that, with speeches anyway, especially if you're having a bit of an outdoor or DIY wedding. Have you got a PA system? Have you got the ways to play it? So there's a lot of logistics. It's the bit that couples come to me quite late on when they do on the day coordination go, yeah, this is happening. And I'm like, how's anyone going to hear it? And they're, didn't think about that. So, there's some logistics there. But
there
yes.
Are. Now, listen, we've got one from Kitty and Ray, and this is around the subject of plus ones, and this is quite a sticky one, I think. Plus ones, we are okay with some, but not with others. 2 partners of friends we don't like because one is obnoxious when drunk, and he will get drunk. And one is the ex of sister of bride. Ooh, how can we resolve without causing conflict?
Oh, I genuinely think you invite who you want to your wedding. And that's a full stop. Like, if you don't want them there, you don't invite them. Also, don't call them plus ones. An invitation is for a name and a name. So in this case, Kitty and Ray are invited. So there are no plus ones. Plus ones don't exist. Like, why is there? Because I still do think plus ones is a bit of a random thing for a wedding. If you don't know someone's name, then why are you inviting them? So in doing it that way, you say, no one's got a plus one. And they can go, oh, but so-and-so, no, they're just invited as a friend. They are a friend. They're not a plus one. A plus one, I think, is slightly outdated. But it's your day. You have there who you want. And actually, even if you're saying, the one who's the ex of the sister of the bride, if you actually wanted them there, that's also okay.
Yeah.
Do you know what? Your sister has to get over it and deal with it. Because if they're a friend, that's okay. If you don't want them there, do not invite them. I know it's hard. I know. I speak to couples all the time. There are so many politics involved with who's invited and who's not. But at some point, we have got to go, do you know what? This is our day.
Yeah.
And, budget, but also not even making an excuse for it, just who we want there.
See, you're very diplomatic. My advice would be just tackle it absolutely head on and say, because your plus one is likely to get drunk and be an obnoxious idiot. And, I don't want your sister, my sister's ex there because it will make her feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yes, you can say it as it is if you feel comfortable to. I'm down for that too. But I think, just ignore the idea of plus ones.
I think that's really sound.
So G and M have asked us a question that's all for you, Vicky, about choosing their readings.
Oh, okay.
So they've said that they've been to a lot of weddings in recent years. They want something different, but they don't even know where to start looking for them because you're hearing the same all the time. And do you know what? I hope none of my friends are listening. I can totally vouch for this because I have read the Pooh reading, Winnie the Pooh, at 6 weddings.
Yes, it's a favourite.
Uh-huh.
Definitely up there. Look, I think one of the biggest problems is for couples, they hit Mr. Google and the question is asked, wedding readings and poems, and there you will get up pretty much all the same thing. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get much in the way of point of difference. So, again, tap into your resources, talk to your celebrant or your minister, or ask somebody in your circle who you know has kind of got married recently about their searches. But ask for inspiration. And if you know that you have got somebody in your circle who is a writer or has, poetic leanings, ask them, would you write something just for us, something that's bespoke? But think about this too. You do not have to have any poems or readings at all. Don't put something in because you feel you ought to. Have it in only if it feels relevant and meaningful. Replace it with a ritual.
Yeah, or also go back to those letters we just spoke about. If someone's written a letter and it's something that you've had, even if it's not to do with your wedding, you've had a letter, a postcard from 10 years ago even, or something that's really sung to you.
There are so many, song lyrics, extracts from books. They don't have to be under the heading of wedding at all. I've done some really lovely readings at weddings that had nothing to do with the occasion itself, but resonated with the couple for another reason. So it might be about something that they shared, a passion or an interest. It might be about love in a very different sense, not sort of typically romantic. And one wedding I did a couple of years ago, which was still one of the most beautiful in terms of content. There were letters from the parents with their advice for a happy marriage.
Yeah.
One lot
I've
was
had
really
a couple of those.
witty and funny. One lot was really tender and really beautiful. It was just gorgeous.
Yeah.
So think outside the box. You do not have to just go with the suggestions that come up on a search engine because you happen to put wedding poems and readings into the search.
I'm with you.
So there you go. From two different couples, we have a question about timing. Number one, I want to be traditionally late to the venue by 10 minutes or so. Is this okay? I can see you twitching already over there.
Are you having a legal registrar-led ceremony, or are you having a celebrant-led ceremony? Because there are two answers there. Celebrants, up for the party, up for being on your side, up for everything. Registrars, you need to be on time.
Yeah.
Quite simply, they have a very small time slot in which they're there for you to do your wedding. And you do need to be on time. On the back of, even if you are running late, 10 minutes, absolutely. I think that's fine for a ceremony. However, if you've got a really tight schedule planned for your day, what's that 10 minutes losing you at another point? And generally what that's going to lose you is photo time.
Yeah.
So I think, and if you want to be traditionally late, then why not get your guests to arrive a bit earlier and tell them the start time is 10 or 15 minutes earlier than it actually is.
Yeah.
And then you can still turn up late. But it's not actually that often that I see people come late.
No, isn't it funny? I
Yeah.
think that's sort of almost fallen out of fashion a little bit, but this question was asked, so there we go. The second question about timing, I feel for this couple. Some of our family and friends are so chilled that they are often late. Mm-hmm. We don't want to have to worry or indeed be shouting at them all day, but we would like to stress the importance of arriving on time, being seated for the ceremony on time, and not wandering off before dinner, etc. We have a very full day organised, but we do need people to cooperate with the schedule. Help.
My dad, stepmom and brother turned up late to my wedding.
No. How rude.
So just as I was pulling up to get married, and I had like a 5-minute walk from the car park to, we were in the woods, I saw them driving up behind, they were behind us in the car, and I was just like, really? Really? You're not there yet. Do you know what? You go and you get married. Luckily they were behind us, so I gave them the 2 minutes grace and said, hurry up, go and sit down. I'm about to get married. But asking them, like we said about the last question, telling them that the service starts 15 minutes before.
Yeah.
Ceremony starts 15 minutes earlier.
Yeah.
Throughout the rest of the day, they're not going to fall out of time because everyone's doing the same thing generally. Everyone's following. It is what it is. There's no real moments where someone has to be specifically on time. It's just getting them to your wedding.
Yeah.
So I would give them an earlier start time.
That's
quite
a
simply.
really simple way to do it.
Wildly Wed, the real wedding planning podcast.
Our supplier tip for this episode comes from the lovely Amy from Lo and Behold Bespoke. She is an expert at styling, hire and coordination.
My top tip for your wedding day is a really simple one. do you. Ignore all the other advice from other people. Ignore everything that you think you should do. Just keep coming back to that question. What do we want? What's us? Make sure your day is all focused on you and your wedding and your beliefs and what you love.
Thank you, lovely Amy. Great stuff. Now, our DIY tip is keeping with the questions theme, really, and that is a way, I think, perhaps of answering or sorting some of those things that are playing on your mind beforehand. When you send out your invites or you include your digital invites, a sheet that generally highlights your wishes for the day. Now, you can make that personal, witty, whatever, but you can get all your key messages about timings, about what's expected of people. You can do that really early on with your invite. And I think generally people find that helpful because they like to know what's expected of them.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And that, our sustainability tip for this episode, we always have one. I had a lovely favour idea from one of my couples. They're putting small jars of pre-measured ingredients for Nan's awesome cookies. Now, Nan is no longer of this world, so it was a really lovely way of including her. And they are including with those little jars of ingredients the recipe, which is printed on card that they're having their wedding stationery done on, just using jars, old jam jars with screw lids. Cheap, personal, absolutely gorgeous.
Lovely. Well, we have been Keshira and Vicky. This is the Wildly Wed pod. You can listen to us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Watch us on YouTube. Rate, review, share and subscribe. We'll see you next time.
Cheers now.
Say I do to the Wildly Wed podcast. Follow us on Insta at Wildly Wed Pod.